So once the sort of map solidified, which I think was about 2008 really, wasn't it, when finally all the words were sort of solid and hadn't changed from that point. But what were the next steps then for you in terms of research?
Right. So there were sort of two steps, I suppose. That one was that some institutions wanted to see me, I think, as the academic, and so while I had not chosen to be a workshop facilitator, I did end up in that role, and that was really great because so many people came to that workshop who then helped develop the work. And so that was on the one side what was happening with it, and then on the other side what was happening with it, that the people who started using it, as well as people who were academically interested in it in terms of a base for possibly their own research, said, well, yeah, but in the end it is only based on 15 stories. And so then the 15 New Zealand-based stories, basically. So then the second part, what we did, by then we had done workshops in several countries, that we gathered the data from those workshops, more in terms of action research, if somebody is trying to create more meaningful work. And they did that before they know the map, say, would then the same sort of themes come up? Would they be able to articulate what it was that they were creating, or what it was that they weren't having, versus working with the map? And so that research was then published, I think, in 2009, and that required solidifying the map a bit more, in the sense that, whereas me, academically, it's intellectually it's intriguing to just, with every little insight, change something, but at some point that isn't really working in the real world anymore. So you have to always have that balance between, well, I'm hearing and I'm continuing to co-create, and at some point we also have to have something that we can agree on. And so after that was published, it became more interesting to see whether then people at all levels of the organization, those with and without a spiritual belief or overtly articulated one, or religious belief, whether if you just took a random sample of the population, whether you would then arrive at the same themes. And so that's the research we then embarked on, and that was a massive project through which my co-researcher Sarah Wright had 3 babies, and we had earthquakes, and there was all sorts of funny things going on. So that was also, it was like, because doing quantitative research is quite technical, but it was also almost like we were forced to again take our time with that and do that carefully. And so that got published in 2012, and what that has meant is, that yes, we could say that this wasn't limited to a New Zealand sample of 15 articulate individuals, but that this was in fact experienced at a universal level, and I think that has been incredibly helpful. And the second thing that has done is that we started with, I think, 120, and we narrowed it down to 90 questions around which questions exactly get to the heart of these meanings. And then we set ourselves, well, now that we have this wonderful tool, let's find out some more information. And it was very generously funded at that time by the University of Canterbury, and so we could just carry on collecting data, basically. And so then so currently we're looking at that data in terms, again, answering the questions of people who work with that. So people would say, well, this is all very nice, but is it then the same for young people versus older people? So we're currently, looking at the data and say, well, do people find different things important? Like, is it true that they find unity more important at the start of their life stage, say, when it's all about, being together with other young people? And is it true that they find serving others or generativity more important at the end of their life? Or is it with this generation actually not at all true? And so those are some of the things that we could, with so much data from around the world, easily find out.
Now, I'm struck by the fact when you said right at the beginning that the question was so alive for people, even when you just said, this is what I'm doing. And it's like you haven't been allowed to rest and not do it because people actually are so engaged with it. So what is it that you think, in a sense, you've uncovered that's so important to people?
There are a few answers to that question. One of them is simply that research has shown that if we experience meaning in our lives, whether that's through our work or through our family or community activities, it doesn't really matter. But if we experience meaning in parts of our lives, that we are healthier and happier and less anxious and also more proactive. That would indicate that or support what people such as Viktor Frankl have said, that experiencing meaning is a natural way of being for people, and not experiencing meaning is not a natural way for being. So I think something in the research question simply resonated with what is naturally there in people. And so if you speak into what is naturally there for people, then people respond to that in an energetic way. So I think that was one part of it. And then I think another part of it was then the more, if you like, the negative conversation around people talking about, yes, how that is how ideally they would like to be in organizations, but that somehow, they experienced that meaning was often sucked out of the organizations because it wasn't made visible, and hence it wasn't proactively managed. And then I think there was a third part of people just individually going, hey, the questions I asked myself weren't maybe that helpful because they were too abstract. In terms of, what is my purpose, and how do I know that my life is aligned with my purpose? And you go, oh golly, I still don't really have an answer. Well, I suppose I do, but it's not something that is that easy to articulate. Whereas if you then work with meaning and you can break it down in a series of questions, you can say, rather than what is the purpose of my life, you can say, how do I experience work that creates unity, and where I am in unity and work together and am supported by people. And that can be when you work by yourself, or it can be when you work in an organization. Or how do I create work that actually makes a difference, or experience work, or put myself forward for work that makes a difference. People had a sense, I can do this, rather than, well, that's a little bit too overwhelming. Every time I ask that question, I feel overwhelmed and that I should know something, but I actually don't know it, or I feel, that I'm always falling short. Whereas if people asked these questions, and from a leader perspective, you kind of, well, there's all these books about leading with purpose, and but if you simply ask, well, does your leadership create unity? Does your leadership enable people in the organization to actually make a difference? Does it help people to be true to themselves? Does it help people to, express all their talents and their full potential? It becomes, it becomes, I think, more doable. And once it becomes more durable, that is when you can start taking responsibility for it. And I think that is really important, because we know from meaning that it should not be given to people, but that people actually seek it themselves and find it themselves. And if they do, that they become more responsible in their lives.
So one of the things that strikes me about the map, coming out of the research you've done, is that this is an intrinsic template. This is the map. What matters to people, what matters most to people, is intrinsic to human beings, and it's shared. So I'm really interested